Welcome back, YouTube, to another episode of 10 with Travis, where we take just 10 minutes a day to dive deep into the Word so you can be more equipped today than you were yesterday. On today's episode of 10 with Travis, we're going to do another episode of Did You Know? Right now, where we're at in the chronological Bible is all the way through Job and actually all the way through Genesis. So today, we're going to talk about the entire book of Job. So when I first started reading the Bible chronologically, we have Genesis 1 through 11, and then it goes into all of Job and then picks back up with Genesis 12. So as I started that, I felt a little uneasy just not reading the Bible the way God positioned it. And again, that was just kind of my own uneasiness because I'd never done it before. But as I gotten through Job and then now through Genesis, there was a ton of application that I could take from Job that I placed in all the different stories in Genesis. So it was a great blessing to me to be able to actually squeeze Job in there before I started reading about, Abraham and Jacob and Isaac and all of them, Joseph in Genesis that we hear about. So more to come on that as we get into Genesis, but today we're going to focus on Job. A lot of people haven't read the book of Job or maybe haven't read it in its entirety and just seen some different verses or chapters in there. So our first Did You Know are all the different characters that are in the book of Job. So there may be a couple more than this, but these are kind of the main characters. The first one is obviously Job. The second one is Job's wife, who we see for just kind of a tiny bit before she is unfortunately not with us or dead. So that's part of the distress that Job goes through, is he does lose his family, but his wife has a small role when she has a dialogue with Job at the beginning of the chapter. A big portion of Job is going to be discussing with his four different friends. Three of them we see early on, and the fourth is a younger one that kind of steps in and has some things to say about what's going on. And those four friends are Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar, and then Elihu, who he's the one that steps in, a little bit after that. And then the two other characters I want to mention are Satan and God. So as you read through the book of Job, or if you're familiar with it, you know that Job loses everything. And that's where you have to have Satan and God in that mix, because most of the time, like I said, God is for us. He is not against us. So Satan is actually the one that goes ahead and takes these things from Job. So here's the flow of Job. It's kind of broken down into three separate sections. The first one is chapters 1 through 3, and that sets the stage for what's going to be going on. And it talks about Job's distress, how everything in his life was taken from him. Then in chapters 4 through 37, so about probably 80% of the book of Job, we just have a discourse between Job and his friends. His friends will say something, Job will respond. Then his friends will respond to what Job said, and they kind of go back and forth, all four friends and Job. And we're going to discuss a couple Did You Knows from that section. And then finally, we end in chapters 38 through 42 when Job gets deliverance and God restores everything back to Job, and he restores it in a double portion. So in the first section with Job's distress, something that we must realize is that God was not the one that put the distress on Job, but rather it was Satan. So God did not orchestrate the loss of the things in Job's life, but he did actually allow it. So there is a conversation between Satan and God where Satan is speaking with God, and God says, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And Satan says, "He only serves you because you have so much. You've given him so much, and you've blessed him, and that's the only reason why he serves you." And God allows Satan to take away these things in his life, but he says, "But you must not touch Job." So he did have divine protection that Satan could not destroy him or kill him off, but God did limit Satan in what he was able to do. And for us, that is kind of just something that we can carry with us. If you feel like Satan is really attacking you, you can cry out to God, and God can obviously deliver you from that, but there's still sometimes working steps that have to happen, but he can continue to limit it more and more and more until you finally do get that deliverance. And that's kind of, like I said, the progression of Job is just some ideologies that are changing in him, some mindsets that are changing in him, and then he fully gets his deliverance with his restoration. So the middle section is where, like I said, most of the reading occurs. It's about 80%, the discourse between Job and his friends. And our first did you know is how Job's friends initially reacted. So once Job lost everything, his friends actually came by his side and just sat with him in silence for 7 days. So again, we kind of read all of the discourse between the two parties, between the friends and Job, but we sometimes over glance that they just came and sat with him for 7 days. And that's just a did you know for us in our lives, that when people are going through stuff, we don't need to be like the friends did after the 7 days and try to reason it out and think why this happened here or there. We just need to sit with people. We just need to show people that we're there for them, that if we need to sit with them 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, however long it may be, we will sit and just stay by their side. A lot of people don't need us to fix their problems. They just need to know that they have someone that they can confide in and that they can discuss when needed. So once they did start getting a discussion, they started accusing Job of doing something wrong and saying that is why this has happened to him. They said, well, you must have a sin in your life on why all of these bad things have happened to you. So we actually, as we read through Job, know that's not true, because God continually says, he says at the beginning and he does say it at the end, that Job was blameless. So we know that that's not true. And that's where our second did you know comes into play. And this is when we talk about the Bible, and we'll see this kind of as we move through Genesis as well, that the Bible is descriptive and prescriptive. So what does that mean? So descriptive means it is just describing something that happened. So we all know that the Bible is true, and that the Bible therefore records the things that happened as they happened. So it's just descriptive. It's just describing what happened. Prescriptive is it's prescribing you to do something. So it's kind of telling you, hey, this is what you should do in your life. This is what you should do in life. This is what you should not do in your life. So that's kind of prescribing you what to do, what not to do. Sometimes we muddy those waters. And one big example of that is something we see in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, many of these generals of the faith that we read about and that we look up to had more than one wife. We see that a lot in the Old Testament. Now, again, that's not prescriptive. That's not saying, hey, it is okay to have more than one wife. Or like I said, in David's case, where he, killed somebody to get Bathsheba as his wife. That was just descriptive. That's not telling us, hey, we can also go ahead and do that because David was blessed. And if he was blessed and he did that, no. That is descriptive, not prescriptive. So that is something that we need to continue to pray about and hear from the Holy Spirit about when we're reading things. What is for our lives and what is in the Bible just as descriptive to set the stage. And I bring this up in Job because the discourse between Job and his friends has a lot of erroneous things in it. It says things about God, or it says things about Job that just simply aren't true, but they're just having the conversation, right? They're just talking back and forth. So it's very descriptive of what they're talking about. So again, many of the stuff that they said was wrong, and we can't take that for our theology because they had wrong theology on what the true character of God is. And the true character of God, which again, you kind of go into the end of the book, which is 38 through 42 is when it kind of starts to turn around. I want to read something from Job chapter 42, which is the last chapter, just the first 3 verses of that chapter. And this is just kind of to show that through all of those first 42 chapters, Job continued to work out his mindset, his theology, how he views God, all those different things. And this kind of sums it up into one nice little statement. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. So that kind of just tells us that, hey, all that stuff that he said in there, that was descriptive of God. He wasn't, he's now turning against that and saying, hey, that's not actually who God is. This is not what happened. My God is a God of blessing. He loves me. He cares for me. All those types of things. So be thinking about that if you're going through the Bible plan, be thinking about that. And just be thinking about that in your daily reading as well. That difference between prescriptive and descriptive. So that does it for today. If this episode has blessed you, I hope you've learned something new, and you can continue to learn stuff new through this Did You Know series. But if the channel or this message has blessed you and you'd like to give to the network so we can reach others at a higher capacity than what we're doing right now, please see the ways below to do that. If you have questions or comments, please drop those below, or you can see our email in the description and reach out to us. I hope you have a blessed day. Our next Did You Know will go into Genesis. I'm so excited to talk about some of the stories that are in there. So please be looking for that. Subscribe, like, so you can get those notifications, and we will see you in the next episode of 10 with Travis.